I hadn't seen the inside of my own home in weeks. The hospital had become my entire world. The beeping of monitors, the sharp sting of disinfectant, the hollow ache of fluorescent lights at midnight. I was there for every breath, every IV change, every whispered prayer during visiting hours. My meals came from vending machines. My sleep was a collection of restless naps on plastic chairs. But I stayed. Because when you love someone, really love them, you show up. No matter how hard, no matter how long. He always said his mother meant everything to him, and I believed him. So when she got sick, I stepped up without question. I thought it would mean something to him, that he'd see the effort, the loyalty, that maybe after everything we'd built, he'd show up for her too, for us. But he barely did. A quick visit here, a forehead kiss there, always rushing out. I asked him to stay one night, just one, but he said work wouldn't allow it. I trusted that. Because love is trust, until it isn't. That night, I was just looking for a charger. His bag was open. His phone lit up in the side pocket. No passcode, just a message that hit like a slap. Last night was perfect. When are you telling her? My heart dropped. I shouldn't have tapped it, but I did. And what I saw? It wasn't a fling. It was a whole other life. Messages, voice notes, pictures, promises. While I was here, scrubbing vomit from hospital sheets, he was out making memories with someone else. I sat there for I don't know how long, staring at his screen like it might apologize if I just waited. Every message I opened chipped away at something I didn't even realize could break. Her name was saved with a heart. There were photos, selfies in hotel rooms, beach dinners, her wearing the shirt I bought him last Christmas. I wasn't just being replaced, I was being mocked. And the worst part? He wasn't even hiding it well. He didn't think I'd ever look. That's how sure he was of me, of my blindness. I wanted to scream, to call him, to demand he come clean, right there, while I held his mother's cold hand. But I didn't. I couldn't. I looked at the woman lying in that bed, fragile, unconscious, unaware, and I chose her. I chose her over my pain, over my pride. I wiped my face with the sleeve of the hoodie I hadn't changed in 2 days and kept sitting by her side like nothing happened. Because while he was out breaking vows, I was still keeping mine. But something inside me changed that night. Not just emotionally, physically. It was like my body hardened, like my bones stopped depending on him to feel whole. I started moving differently, speaking less, watching more. Every time he texted me some excuse about why he couldn't stop by, I smiled at the screen like I believed him. He didn't know I already knew, and I wasn't going to tell him, not yet. Days passed, but time felt warped. I kept doing what I always did, adjusting pillows, checking the IV bag, warming up soup his mother could barely sip. Nurses started calling me family, and I let them, because in that sterile, windowless room, I was the only one who hadn't abandoned her. He, on the other hand, became a ghost, barely a text, rarely a visit. And when he did show up, he acted like everything was normal, kissed my cheek, asked about his mom, said he was swamped. I nodded, every single time, like I hadn't seen every lie written out in 4K on his screen. I began documenting everything, not just the affair, but the patterns, the money transfers, the calls made at 2 a.m., the way he started dressing better, caring more about his phone than about his wife. I wasn't collecting evidence for revenge. Not yet. I just needed to see it with my own eyes, to convince myself I wasn't overreacting. Because for years, I'd been taught to doubt my instincts, to not make a big deal out of nothing. But this wasn't nothing. This was a man building a life behind my back while I stood guard over his. And yet I kept caring for her. I kept folding his mother's cardigans, brushing her hair, whispering updates she might not hear but I shared anyway. Because through all of it, she was still innocent. And I still had one more truth to face. What would I do when she finally opened her eyes again? When she finally woke up, it wasn't some dramatic movie moment. Her eyes fluttered, dry and confused, and she whispered my name like a question. I smiled. Not because I felt joy, but because it was easier than letting everything else spill out. She didn't know yet. About him, about me, about the woman who thought she could step into my life while I was busy saving hers. I helped her sip water, fixed her pillows, and tucked the truth deep in my chest like a secret I wasn't ready to share. He still didn't show up. Said something about a client emergency when I called to tell him his mother had regained consciousness. She blinked slowly as I put the phone on speaker, listening to his voice go on about deadlines and meetings. She didn't say a word, just looked at me. And in that look, I felt something shift. It wasn't confusion or concern, it was recognition, like she knew something wasn't right. Maybe it was the way I smiled too much, or how my voice cracked when I said, "He misses you." I wanted to tell her. God, I did. But I needed to be sure it wouldn't break her. So I waited. I watched. I helped her take those painful first steps, holding her arm with steady hands even while mine trembled inside. And the more she healed, the more I could see it. She missed him. But she also felt his absence. She felt mine too. Every time I spooned soup into her mouth or helped her with her socks, I could see the guilt building in her eyes. Not for something she did, but for what she was starting to suspect. It was a Thursday morning when I finally said it out loud. The air was heavy with that hospital stillness, the kind that makes even whispers sound too loud. I was helping her comb through the tray of lukewarm breakfast when I looked up and said, "He's having an affair." No build-up, no explanation, just truth, raw and quiet. She froze, her spoon midair, then slowly set it down without looking at me. For a second, I thought she hadn't heard. But then I saw her shoulders rise and fall, like a breath she'd been holding for weeks. She didn't ask for proof. She didn't defend him. She didn't even say his name. Instead, she reached out and touched my wrist, her fingers cold and trembling. "I thought something was wrong," she said, barely above a whisper. Then her eyes filled, not with shock, but with grief. Grief for the woman beside her, yes, but also for the son she thought she knew. "I raised him better," she murmured, more to herself than to me. That broke something in me, because I could have handled anger. But this quiet heartbreak, it was unbearable. We sat in silence for a while, both of us mourning different versions of him. Mine, the husband I believed in. Hers, the son she once rocked to sleep. No screaming, no drama. Just two women sitting in a room that suddenly felt colder than before. I didn't need her to take sides, but in that moment, I knew she already had. And what came next wasn't going to be just my fight anymore. After that day, something changed between us. There was no official agreement, no dramatic vow. Just a silence filled with knowing. She started asking gentle questions. "Have you eaten today? Did you sleep at all last night?" But underneath, I knew what she was really asking. "Are you okay holding all this?" I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. And she started watching him too. She noticed when he didn't call, noticed when he sent flowers instead of showing up, and each time, I saw a little more of her faith in him disappear. She began doing things she hadn't before. Asking about our bank account, wondering aloud why the title of their vacation home had only his name now. They were questions dressed as curiosity, but I knew better. She was digging, quietly, carefully. Not for me, but for both of us. We didn't speak of revenge, not yet, but I think we both felt the same pull. That if he could treat love like it was disposable, then maybe he needed to learn what it felt like to lose something permanent. One night she held my hand, not in that sweet motherly way, but with a grip full of fire. "He lied to you," she said, "but he lied to me too." And just like that, the silence between us became something else entirely. Not sadness, not fear. It became resolve, because he hadn't just betrayed a wife. He'd betrayed the only woman who still believed in him. We didn't sit down and map it all out in one grand, cinematic moment. It started with small things. Questions here, a comment there. I'd mention a credit card charge that didn't make sense, And she'd raise an eyebrow. She started going through old files in her bedside drawer when no one was watching. And I started saving screenshots, messages, bank transfers, hotel receipts buried in email trash folders. At first, it felt wrong, like I was doing something dirty. But then I remembered, he did that first. The more we uncovered, the worse it got. He wasn't just cheating emotionally, he was reckless. He had transferred funds from their family trust without her consent, bought luxury items, took trips, even opened a second bank account. And the woman, she wasn't just a fling, she was involved. He'd sent her pictures of the house, of heirlooms, like he was preparing her to take my place, our place, as if we were some role she could audition for. That was when I stopped feeling hurt and started feeling angry. His mother, bless her, was sharper than anyone gave her credit for. "He thinks we're too soft to notice," she said one afternoon, her voice low but steady. "That's his first mistake." She called her lawyer the next morning, quietly, discreetly. I was there, sipping stale hospital coffee, while she rewrote the titles of 3 properties and froze a joint account. We didn't speak much that day. We didn't need to. We were building something, not just a case, but a reckoning. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who moved in silence like that. But grief has a way of teaching you strategy. I started keeping a folder on a cloud drive, password protected, labeled something boring like Tax Docs 2019. Inside, everything, every lie, every wire transfer, every message that started with "I miss you" and ended with "she'll never know." I printed backups and hid them in my old baking tins, the ones he never touched because he wasn't into sweets. Fitting. His mother, meanwhile, was playing her own long game. She spoke to the accountant discreetly, asked about business shares, distributions, and legacy clauses. I listened, learning a language I never thought I'd need: dividends, equity, asset restructuring. I used to think building a life together meant shared playlists and vacation plans. Now I knew it also meant protecting yourself from the person sleeping in your bed. He still had no idea. Too busy posting filtered photos with captions like, "Grind never stops," and "Family is everything." He had no clue the 2 women he thought would stay quiet forever were working behind the scenes like chess masters, calmly, methodically, removing every piece from his board. And the more we moved, the less guilt I felt. Because this wasn't revenge anymore. It was correction. We met once at her house, just the 2 of us, no hospital walls, no monitors, no interruptions. She brewed tea like it was any other afternoon, but everything about that day felt different. There was a weight to her words, a steadiness in her hands. She pulled out documents, some dating back years, property deeds, partnership agreements, even notes from conversations he thought she'd forgotten. "He's been sloppy," she said, sliding one paper across the table. "But we won't be." I added my pieces to the puzzle. The dinner receipts from dates I never attended, the jewelry bought for someone else, the voice notes where he promised her, soon. Together, it formed a picture so clear it made me sick. He wasn't preparing to leave me. He thought he'd already gotten away with it. He didn't just want to cheat, he wanted to replace, erase, rewrite the story of his life and cut us out of the final chapter. But here's what he forgot. We wrote the first chapters, and we weren't done yet. While he played house with someone who didn't know the weight of his lies, we were sealing every exit behind him. Titles were transferred. Accounts were locked, legal ties were quietly undone, and he was still smiling in selfies, clueless that the foundation beneath him had already cracked. Because you can't build a new life on top of one you've shattered, not when the rubble starts to talk. The invitation went out like any other family dinner. Simple, casual. "Let's celebrate Mom's recovery," it said. Nothing dramatic, nothing suspicious. He accepted without hesitation. Probably imagined a night full of compliments and casseroles, a pat on the back for showing up. He had no idea he was walking into the final scene of a story we'd been quietly writing behind his back. And the best part? He helped plan it, even offered to bring wine. That evening, the house looked perfect. Candles lit, fresh flowers, plates set with care. I wore a soft blue dress he once said made me look too serious, and I smiled when he walked in like I'd never cried over him. His mother was radiant, stronger, sharper, and more composed than I'd seen her in months. She greeted him with a hug that lasted just a second too long. He didn't notice. Of course he didn't. He was too busy being the center of attention. Dinner began with laughter, small talk, compliments about the roast. I caught him sneaking glances at his phone between bites, probably checking if she had texted. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Because I knew what was coming. And it wasn't just a confrontation. It was a reckoning, served warm with dessert on the side. And for once, he was the only one at the table without a clue what the real occasion was. The toast started innocently enough. His mother rose from her seat with a glass in hand, her smile warm but restrained. "I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she began, "for the prayers, the visits, the love." Her voice was steady, but I saw her knuckles tighten around the stem of the glass. He leaned back in his chair, smug, probably expecting her to praise his non-existent devotion. Instead, she turned to me and said, "But most of all, thank you to Clara, the one who truly showed up." He shifted in his seat, still smiling, but less certain now. I stood up too, holding my phone like it was any other object, like it didn't contain the unraveling of everything he thought he'd hidden. "Before we cut the cake," I said, "I think there's something everyone deserves to hear." Then I tapped play. The room filled with her voice, sweet, breathless, intimate. "I miss you already. Last night was perfect." Chairs scraped, forks paused. His face drained of color before the audio even finished. He opened his mouth to speak, but she raised her hand. "No," his mother said, her tone ice over fire. "You've said enough." Then, slowly, methodically, she turned to the guests. "This house, the car, the business, they were in my name. They're not yours. Not anymore." He blinked, stunned. She never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her words hit harder than any scream ever could. He looked around like he was searching for a way out, a door, a denial, a lifeline. But no one moved. No one spoke. The air was thick with disbelief, with embarrassment that didn't belong to us. And for once, he couldn't charm his way through it. Not with that fake laugh. Not with that pitiful, "let me explain." There was nothing left to explain. Every face around that table had just seen who he really was, and no carefully curated version of himself could cover it up this time. He started to argue, some rambling defense about privacy, betrayal, misunderstanding, but even his words sounded hollow, like a man talking at the bottom of a well. His mother didn't flinch. She looked him in the eye and said, "You used me. You used her. And now you're on your own." Then she turned back to her guests, lifted her glass again, and toasted not to family but to freedom. I didn't even need to say another word. She had said it all. He stood there, torn between pride and panic as we passed the dessert plates. He didn't touch his. He didn't say goodbye. Just walked out the door into a silence he never thought we'd hand him. He came thinking he'd be celebrated, and he left with nothing. Not a house, not a wife, not even a mother who believed in him. The morning after that dinner, the house felt different. Quieter, yes, but not in a sad way. It was peaceful, like something heavy had finally been lifted. His clothes were gone. His car wasn't in the driveway. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't wake up wondering where he was. I knew. He was out there, lost in a world he built on lies, and I was finally free from it. I made coffee slowly that morning, savoring each step like a ritual. It felt like a beginning. Legally, things moved fast. His name came off the deeds. The accounts were closed. His mother rewrote her will with a sharp clarity that made me want to cheer. Everything he thought he'd stolen, taken back. Not with a fight, but with facts. I didn't scream, didn't post a thing. I let the silence speak. I let the paperwork deliver the consequences. He reached out once, a half-hearted apology over email, full of vague regrets and no ownership. I didn't even respond. What was there left to say? Instead, I focused on something I hadn't in years, myself. The money I had once set aside for our future, the trips, the home upgrades, the someday fund, was now mine alone. And I knew exactly what to do with it, not to spend it out of spite, but to create something real, something healing, something honest. Because while he had been chasing illusions, I had rediscovered the truth of who I was without him. I found a little place an hour outside the city. Nothing flashy, just acres of quiet, with trees that swayed like they knew how to listen. I poured my energy into building something new, a wellness retreat, a space for women who'd lost parts of themselves, through betrayal, illness, burnout, grief, to come and breathe again. I didn't want pity. I wanted purpose. I wanted to take every broken piece of my story and turn it into something that helped someone else feel whole. The renovations were slow but healing. I picked paint colors that made me feel calm, not what he would have approved of. I planted lavender out front, even though he used to say the smell gave him headaches. I chose every pillow, every lamp, every scent with intention, not to impress, but to restore. The first guest cried in the garden her second day there. She told me, "I didn't know I needed this." And I just smiled. Because I did. I knew exactly how it felt to forget yourself, and how powerful it is to remember. His name never came up again. Not in my conversations, not in my thoughts, not even in my nightmares. Because what once haunted me now fueled me. Every time I watched a woman arrive, shoulders hunched, eyes tired, and leave standing taller, lighter, I knew I'd built something real, something lasting, something he could never fake, fabricate, or take away. His mother came to visit the retreat once. She brought a basket of fresh herbs from her garden and walked slowly through the space I'd created. She didn't say much, but the look in her eyes said everything. Pride, peace, maybe even a little regret. Not for what she'd lost, but for how long it took to see the truth. We sat on the porch, two women who had both been lied to by the same man, and watched the sun dip below the trees. She reached for my hand and said, "You saved me too." And in a way, I think we saved each other. I still get moments, flashes really, of the woman I used to be. The one who waited by the phone. The one who clung to scraps of affection and called them love. But she feels like a shadow now. A ghost I no longer fear. Because I'm not her anymore. I'm not the wife who begged for attention. I'm not the daughter-in-law who looked the other way. I'm the woman who rose from it. Who stood still long enough to feel the betrayal, and then walked straight through it. He lost me. He lost her. He lost the legacy he thought would always be his. All to chase a secret he couldn't even protect. But I found peace. I found purpose. I found myself. And I'll never let any man make me forget who I am again.